first episode of our new program series entitled United Foods of America. In this series of programs, we will be looking at regional variations in foods across our country. And what better place to start than pizza, which is one of our most beloved foods. In fact, 30% of Americans eat pizza once a week or more. It's the most frequently shared type of comfort food on Instagram, beating out hamburgers 10-1, if you can believe that. And while pizza didn't originate here, we certainly have made it our own in many ways. So what are the components of pizza? Well, this really defines how it can be differentiated across our country and the different styles that we see. It's basically the crust, of course, the sauce, the cheese, and the toppings. These are the elements of what makes pizza pizza, and certainly can help inform how it varies across our country. So we'll get into a little bit of that, but I wanted to talk about the history of pizza. How did we get here? So flatbreads with toppings have been around for centuries, notably in ancient Greece and Rome, but they were missing a key ingredient, and that was the tomato. Tomatoes were brought over from Italy to the New World, or brought over to Italy from the New World, starting in about the 16th century. At first, Italians were a little bit afraid of tomatoes because they were part of the nightshade family and they didn't know how that would react with their bodies. So they were kind of using them ornamentally. Tomatoes grow quite well in the soil around Mount Vesuvius near Naples, including the famous pizza tomato, the San Marzano tomato. So pizza began to appear in this area of Italy around Naples, where it was popular with the working class. It's portable, you can carry it with you, it doesn't cost a lot. So it's a great food for people who are kind of trying to struggle to feed their family. In the United States, pizza really took off after World War II as GIs developed a taste for pizza as they were moving through Italy during the war. They fell in love with it and they wanted to see it at home on the home front. So as I've kind of alluded to, the very first place we see pizza is in Naples, and that's the Neapolitan style. And you can see an example on the screen here. They use fresh mozzarella on their pizzas. So you can see it's a very white colored cheese. It's a little different than our traditional aged mozzarella that's more of a yellow color. And the Neapolitan style uses crust that's made from fermented dough, which helps to achieve that puffy texture, especially around the edge. You see that. The extra fine flour that it uses gives it a pleasantly chewy quality. And Neapolitan style tends to use very fresh ingredients, including fresh mozzarella di bufala, which is made from the milk of the water buffalo. The crust, the end result is that the crust is a little bit damp in the center. It can even be it's been described as soupy. So you usually eat it with a knife and fork if you're eating a true Neapolitan style. But it tastes so great you won't even care that it's a little bit soggy in the middle. It's cooked in extremely hot wood-fired ovens, typically in Naples, which sometimes reach 800 to 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This allows the pizzas to cook really quickly, and it avoids the ingredients drying out. Perhaps the most famous example of Neapolitan-style pizza is the Margarita Pizza, which made its first appearance in 1889. It was custom made for Queen Margarita of Savoy, and it has that fresh mozzarella, it has basil, it has tomato sauce, and those three colors of green, white, and red represent the colors of the Italian flag. Well, she was a big fan of this pizza and gave it her stamp of approval. Like many famous food and beverage products, true Neapolitan pizza is regulated by the oh my gosh, Associazione Verace Pizza Napolitana. Boy, that's a mouthful, which is abbreviated as VPN. There are 95 VPN certified pizzerias in the United States, and we're lucky enough to have 7 of them in the Chicago area. And this includes Coda di Volpe, Forno Rosso, and Spacca Napoli. Those are the great Chicago places that you can try this type of pizza. If you're in Naples, you might actually want to go to Da Michele, Di Matteo, or Di Matozzi. Da Michele was featured in the movie Eat, Pray, Love with Julia Roberts. So you might have caught a glimpse of it there. But any of these 3 pizzerias in Naples and countless more are available, and they're all fantastic. So that's Neapolitan pizza, and this was very influential. It came over into the New World, in fact, into America, where we'll talk about New York style. That's where it first really took hold. So New York style, actually, there are a couple of New York styles. The first is sort of an offshoot of that Neapolitan style. And pizzerias like this are known for their whole pies rather than by the slice. And we're talking about places like Lombardi's, and we're talking about people that learned their craft through the Lombardi pizzeria, like John's on Bleecker Street and Patsy's in East Harlem. These are the real old school New York pizzerias that use coal-fired ovens. Lombardi actually claims to be the first licensed pizzeria in the US opening in 1905, but there's some evidence that they weren't the actual first pizzeria in New York or in the United States, but it was around that time, maybe a few years before that pizza came to our country. But the style that we're usually thinking about when we're talking about New York style is the by the slice style of pizza. This, rather than the coal-fired ovens, used gas-fired ovens. And instead of 800, 900 degrees, it's more like 500 or 600 degrees in these gas ovens. The crust is thin and crispy, and it's made from high gluten flour, which adds some chewiness to it. They often add a little bit of sugar into the dough to allow it to brown better, despite being in this cooler oven, this 500 or 600 degree oven. Unlike traditional Neapolitan pizzas and the whole pizzas like at Patsy's and John's, pizzas in the slice style use low moisture grated mozzarella. And the cheese often is spread clear to the edge of the pizza, making for a really photogenic slice of pizza. Their sauce uses plenty of aromatics like garlic and oregano, and the slices are cut from these really large pizzas, like 18-inch in diameter pizzas. And to eat it, you typically would, you'd get your slice, you'd blot off the grease that might be on top of the cheese, and then you'd fold it in half and eat it that way. Some of the very best pizzas by the slice in New York can be found at places like Scar's on the Lower East Side. It's a little bit east of Chinatown. Di Fara in Brooklyn. And if you're kind of in Midtown Manhattan, near Penn Station, you can find a place called NY Pizza Suprema, which gets great reviews, and it's really centrally located if you're walking around Manhattan. Can you get New York style pizza in Chicago? Of course you want to know that. And yes, the answer is you can. I would encourage you to go to Little Pops in Naperville for an authentic slice. And I hear really good things about Jimmy's Pizza Cafe in the Ravenswood neighborhood of Chicago. So I mentioned some of these names. If you actually are in New York City, you should definitely try Lombardi's. You should try Di Fara, Scar's. And there's that Joe's in Greenwich Village. That's a good bet. There's a Totonno's in Coney Island. There are just countless great pizza places in New York City in this style. So after New York, we're going to talk about New Haven, Connecticut. And believe it or not, this is one of the pizza capitals of the world. It's a direct descendant of that pizza that we get from Naples. New Haven has an unusually large number of immigrants coming from that region of Italy, from the Bay of Naples area. And how did that happen? Well, they were actively recruited by a company called Sargent Hardware, who had ultimately about 10 or 12,000 immigrants coming to work for them in their New Haven factory, which they made mainly door and lock hardware. And all of them settled in a neighborhood kind of near the factory. And they, of course, brought their food culture with them, including a love for pizza. So what is Neapolitan style pizza? Well, New Haven style, New Haven. I mean, it's related to Neapolitan, but it's cooked over high heat, just like Neapolitan style. But they often use coal-fired ovens instead of the wood-fired ovens that you would often find in Naples. And you may remember that New York City had some of those coal-fired ovens as well for their authentic slices at Lombardi's, etc. And in New Haven, this gives their crust a kind of a blackened color. And residents are quick to point out that it's not burnt, it's just charred. And that gives it extra flavor. And they actually mean it. And I think they're probably onto something. New Haven pizza crust is fermented, giving it a more complex flavor than the New York crust, which typically is not as fermented as New Haven crust. It's also chewier as a result. And the sauce in New Haven is relatively simple. They want to highlight the sweetness of the San Marzano tomatoes that they use. So they don't add a lot of those aromatics in it like you'll find in New York City. And you'll also learn very quickly that the pizzas are not called pizzas, but a pizzas. There's an A in front of it. And they don't say a pizza, they say a beats. So I kind of look at this like Tony Soprano would call capicola gabagool. So it's kind of the same Italian family kind of pronunciation that you have. So if you're curious if a New Haven pizza joint is authentic or legitimate, you want to see if they have a plain pizza on the menu. A plain beets is basically just the tomato sauce on a crust with a little bit of sprinkled like Romano cheese on it. There's not any mozzarella on a plain pie. So if they have that, chances are they're doing it the authentic way. One of the most famous New Haven pizza styles is the white clam pizza. And if you remember, the pizza before this one had kind of a yellow color, that was their clam pizza. And that's really famous at one of their pizza joints called Frank Pepe's. So Frank Pepe was the first pizza maker in New Haven. And he opened his joint up in 1925, and that was soon followed after by a place called Sally's. And the third of the major trifecta of pizza places in New Haven is Modern Beats, which got its current owner in the 1980s. Now, each of these places have their fans, and all of them are really good. So Pepe's is sort of that old school traditional choice. Sally's has sort of a family feel to it. It also has this reputation as a my way or the highway kind of pizza place. It was a favorite of Frank Sinatra, who would often, if he was performing in New York City, he would have pizza brought to him from New Haven, which isn't that far away. And more recently, Michael Bolton has become a fan. Flo was the wife of the proprietor, Sal or Sally. She fielded calls on the hard to get friends and family phone number that they would have. And there's a story going around, maybe it's apocryphal, but it says that Flo answered the phone one morning and it was someone calling for President Clinton and Vice President Gore and asking if they could have lunch at Sally's that day. Apparently the Clintons used to eat at Sally's regularly when they were students at Yale. But Flo said, "I'm sorry, we're not open for lunch." And the press secretary replied, "Are you sure this is the President of the United States?" And Flo answered, "We don't open early for anybody." So it's that kind of place. Modern, the third of the three, is maybe the most customer friendly and least likely to have a long line. Despite this, they still have countless fans. Modern's specialty is the Italian bomb pizza, which has bacon, sausage, pepperoni, onion, peppers, and mushrooms. So can you get New Haven style pizza in Chicago? Yes, you can. Peace Pizza in Wicker Park serves up authentic New Haven style. You can even get a white clam pizza at Peace. You could even add bacon to it like they sometimes do in New Haven to give it extra flavor. The next place I'd like to mention, or the next style I'd like to mention, is called Ohio River Valley Pizza, which is really unusual. So if you look at the image here, you can see that something out of the ordinary is happening, especially on that slice on the right. What's going on with that cheese? Well, the answer is the cheese is cold, believe it or not. This style of pizza originated in Steubenville, where when Primo DiCarlo opened DiCarlo's in 1945 after serving in World War II. DiCarlo didn't like all the grease that would sometimes accumulate on the top of the pizza, so he devised this alternate strategy where you have cold cheese on a hot pizza. So first, the pizza crust is baked in the oven with the sauce. Then a few minutes later, a little bit of cheese is added to the top of that tomato sauce and crust that's in the oven already, and it's returned to the oven after that. Finally, it's pulled out of the oven a few minutes later, and loads of cold or room temperature cheese and toppings are added. So according to people that love this style, the best bites are those which are both cold and hot at the same time. There are critics, of course, of this style, which they call it Lunchables pizza because it has that cold cheese on top of it, but devotees really love it. So you might wonder whether you can get this in Chicago, and unfortunately you can't. You'll have to make a trip to Steubenville, Ohio, or that area to give it a chance. So DiCarlo's is the place to go in Steubenville. The next style I'd like to talk about is Roman pizza. And it doesn't really represent a regional style in the United States, and it isn't intrinsically tied to pizza's history like it is in Naples, but I think it's too unique not to mention at some point in this presentation. So the kind of Roman pizza that we're talking about is what I have shown here. It's individual slices of pizza, and they call it pizza integlia or pizza al taglio. And it means pizza by the cut. And so it's sold by the slice, and it's usually cut with a pair of scissors or kitchen shears from like a tray of pizza like you see here. It's priced by the pound typically, which is also different. So you might have one of the pizzas cost a certain amount per pound, like I don't know. You can see on the screen here some of the actual examples. So there's one with buffalo mozzarella, anchovies, sesame seeds, and zucchini for $14.99 a pound. But if you get the one with zucchini, ricotta, and scapece, that's only $11.99 a pound. So it varies in cost by the slice of pizza that you choose. In Rome, it's traditionally eaten like a street food, and vendors would be every few blocks. The pizza is actually made in that rectangular pan and has a crust that's very similar to focaccia. And all manner of interesting toppings are offered, as you can see here are just a few. As you look at them in the display case before you make your selections, in many cases, the pizza will have already been baked. So they'll ask you if you want them to heat it up for you in their oven, and they'll crisp it up for a few minutes and then serve it to you. Or you can get it unheated and you can reheat it at home if you're bringing it home. So is this kind of pizza available in Chicago? It is. In fact, the photos of the Roman pizza that I have here are at Bonci Pizzeria in the West Loop in Chicago. And Chicago is actually the first location that they opened outside of Italy. And in Wicker Park, there's another place called Pizza Metro that you can try Roman style pizza. And there are other places that's kind of growing in popularity around the country, but Chicago was one of the first places to get it. So the next thing we're going to talk about, and it's Susan that's going to do the talking, is Detroit style pizza.
Thanks, Mike. So Detroit style pizza. Well, not all pizzas are round. Some of the Sicilian style variety are square or rectangular, and the Detroit style pizza falls under this umbrella. The history of the Detroit pizza dates back to the mid-1940s, around the same time of the end of World War II, as Mike had mentioned. And it has ties to the auto industry, interestingly enough. So it traces its roots to one man. His name was Gus Guerra. And in 1946, Gus owned what was then a neighborhood bar. It was called Buddy's Rendezvous. And he decided he needed something for the menu to go along with the bar, the beer, and the other things that he was serving at the bar. So he enlisted the help of his wife, Anna, and she borrowed a dough recipe from her Sicilian mother. The Sicilian dough, topped with cheese and tomato sauce, would eventually become the model for pizza in Detroit. Now, the key ingredient to this pizza isn't something that you eat, however, it's actually the pan that it's cooked in. Legend has it that the first pan that was used by Gus was actually a forged steel pan that he borrowed from local automotive plants. And that's why it's the square shape with this focaccia-like crust. Baking in these steel pans allowed them to produce a very light and crispy crust. And that's really what is quintessential with the Detroit style pizza. This was the first known square pizza in the United States. And now, more than 75 years later, this pizza style has become a national favorite. So what sets this pizza apart from a true Sicilian style pizza, and what makes it a Detroit style pie? Well, it starts with the pizza's crust. It is thick and airy and spongy like focaccia, yet it's very crisp on the outside. And this is in part due to the flour that is used to make the crust. Most Detroit style pizzas use bread flour, which has more protein than all-purpose flour, more gluten. So it's going to give you that characteristic chew that you expect from a good pizza crust because it's more elastic when it bakes. In addition, when it's baked, the crust will get a signature browning from frying in the fat that's produced by the cheese that gets kind of pushed down along the sides. And the cheese, speaking of which, is also different. The cheese in Detroit style pizzas is a Wisconsin brick cheese. So this cheese has a higher fat content than the traditional mozzarella, and it gets its name from the process of being placed between bricks during the aging process, and this will expel some of the whey and just create a richer, fattier cheese. The cheese darkens as it bakes along the sides, and while it may look like burnt crust, it's simply crispy, somewhat charred, cheesy edge. It's known as frico in pizza parlance. It tastes like the best part of a grilled cheese, which is why a lot of times people fight over the corners of these Detroit style pies because there's more frico per slice. Another difference with the Detroit style pie that really sets it apart is the order of the toppings. The sauce goes on the very top of the pizza instead of on the top of the dough. And this gives, this is how the pizza got its nickname Red Top. The sauce is a bright acidic sauce with a hint of sweetness from sugar. It's usually applied at room temperature once the pizza's been removed from the oven, and kind of laid across in these stripes on top of the pizza. In essence, the Detroit style pizza flips traditional pizza on its head by beginning with the double-proofed dough that is pressed into this square pan, and then layering the toppings. The pepperoni is always placed right on top of the dough to allow the flavors to be absorbed into the crust. And then you have the crumbled brick cheese, and then the other toppings. It's baked, and then you've got the stripes of the red sauce on top. In Chicago, the most popular topping is raw fennel lace sausage. In Detroit, pepperoni is iconic. Traditionally, it comes in its natural casing, and this will cause the pepperoni to curl up and char on the edges as it's baking. So, can you get this pizza in Chicago? Why, yes. In Chicago, there has been a recent wave of square pies, these Sicilian style pies that have a nod to Detroit. So one of the first places you may want to check out is in Evanston. It's called Union Squared, and it was started, it's an offshoot of Union Pizza, which is a wood-fired option down the street, but Union Squared is really near the Northwestern campus. Di Battista is the gentleman who started the Union Squared, and he fell in love with the Sicilian style pizza while visiting his in-laws in Detroit, and he really felt like it had a place here, and so he has been working hard to recreate the pies just as they are in Detroit at places like Buddy's, which is the original place in Detroit. Jets is another pizzeria. It's a fast food take on Detroit style pizza, but it's not bad in a pinch. And there are 14 different locations in Chicago. So with all of those locations, there's always one close by. In addition, there's Polly G's, which is in Logan Square. And he makes a really good Detroit style pizza there. You can also check out Fat Chris's Pizza and Such in Andersonville on Foster Avenue. And then the 5 Squared Food Truck, which is a 2-person company. They bake their pizzas out of the Hatchery, which is a small business incubator in East Garfield Park. And they're supposed to be putting out really yummy pieces of pizza. But if you're in Detroit, you're going to want to go to the original Buddy's to get this really delicious pizza. Their sauce is a tomato and basil sauce. It's topped with shaved Parmesan cheese and a special spice blend. So it's definitely worth the trip if you're in the Detroit area. After Detroit, we're going to move on to Chicago. And I know that we probably have all had Chicago style pizza. It's, it's what we're known for, and it's delicious in its own right. Chicago is sometimes teased for its sky-high stuffed pizzas. Usually the stuffed pizza has the bottom crust and a top crust, and then is more like a casserole than a pizza. But many people think that there's only this one style in Chicago, and there are actually 3. There's the deep dish, which started in 1943, and stuffed, which started in 1974. And then there's the tavern style, which is what most people in Chicago truly eat. And this started around the Prohibition era. It's a thin crust, and it's cut into quintessential squares. Deep dish and stuffed are not interchangeable. Stuffed has a second crust on top, while the deep dish is more similar to like a pan style pizza. And the goal of the deep dish and the stuffed is to transform a slice of pizza into a supper, whereas the thinner slices are things that you can snack on throughout the evening. In fact, the Tavern Style pizza was created with the opposite, with this goal in mind. The super thin square pieces are designed to be a breeze to hold in one hand while you're drinking a beer in the other. And it's just meant to snack on while you're at the bar. So let's talk a little bit about a couple of these styles. We'll start off with the deep dish pizza. So Chicago is the deep dish pizza destination for pizza lovers. So its tall crust holds in a pool of tomato sauce and a generous layer of toppings and cheese. And when you dig into a deep dish pizza, you're gonna see just layers of gooey cheese and chunky sauce and the gooey dough. And you know, it almost defies logic and gravity because it somehow maintains its shape, almost like a savory cake or pie. The Chicago deep dish is so beloved that it spun off multiple nationwide chains like Pizzeria Uno, which was the restaurant that was actually responsible for creating the deep dish pizza in 1943, and also Lou Malnati's. So what is a Chicago deep dish pizza? A Chicago deep dish pizza is also, it's called a Chicago style pizza, and it's cooked in a pan instead of using a baking tray or a pizza peel. And this allows for its quintessential layered look. Additionally, it allows you to have more toppings. And so the toppings are rearranged in a Chicago style pie because it's so much thicker than a regular pizza. So the cheese and the other toppings would likely burn if they were left on the top of the pie. So for this reason, you find the sauce on top, not the cheese. So, and this is similar to the Detroit style pizza in that way. Many times cheese is the first layer, and then it's followed by any toppings, and then topped off with the sauce. Another thing that's different, I mean, Chicago and Detroit both have thick pizzas, but the crust is different. The Detroit style crust is a lighter crust with an exterior crunch, whereas the Chicago pizza uses the semolina flour, and it has a more distinctive yellow flavor, and it's got a sweetness to it as well. And the dough is pressed in these pans and pressed up the side so that it will hold all of the fillings in it. The crust is usually a medium thickness. Too thin and it won't hold the ingredients, and too thick it won't cook properly. And the other thing that's different is that these are cooked at a lower temperature, and they're cooked for a lot longer, so that they don't burn and they will cook all the way through. The stuffed pizza, like I said, is similar to the deep dish, but it's got that extra layer of dough and then sauce on top. And they're stuffed because you can fit more ingredients in them. Stuffed pizzas made their first appearance in Chicago in the 1970s at Nancy's Pizzeria and at Giordano's. Mike, can you advance? And then the third style is the Tavern Style. And the Tavern Style has a thin crust pizza that's very popular around Chicago. Unlike New York style pizza, Chicago style thin crust has a crust that is firm and it's slightly crunchy. It has almost a slightly cracker-like consistency. Most Chicago pizzerias also cut them into squares rather than wedges. And this is known as the party cut or the Tavern Style. So can you get them in Chicago? Well, yes, of course you can. Let's talk about where some of the best examples of the different styles of pizza are. And I'm going to start with Pequod's. Pequod's is pretty close to being a true Chicago style pizza, and it gets the highest reviews year after year by the pizza experts. Pizzeria Uno is obviously the original pizza, definitely worth checking out. And Gino's East is came along pretty soon after Pizzeria Uno. Lou Malnati's is another easy to find and popular stuffed or Chicago style pizza. If you're looking for a true stuffed pizza, Giordano's would be the place to go. And then if you're wanting to try a tavern style pizza, a couple examples would be Barnaby's, Candlelight, and Dino's Italian Pizza and Italian Restaurant in on the Northwest side. They all offer, good examples of tavern style pizza. You can also close by get Aurelio's Pizza, which is, again, the tavern style pizza that Chicagoans really love on a day-to-day basis. From Chicago, we are going to continue heading west to the Quad Cities. So spanning the Mississippi River between Iowa and Illinois, the Quad Cities gave birth to yet another style of pizza. And this is a hearty pizza that is sliced in strips. And like the Roman style pizza that Mike was talking about, they use scissors a lot of times to cut the pizza into these strips. This pizza first came about in about 1955, and it was developed by the Maniscalco family. And their business was the only sit-down restaurant and bar in the area. And it was a place that was called Tony's Club Capri. And they served Italian beef sandwiches and strombolis, and they were looking for something new. And so they ended up opening up this club called Frank's Club Napoli Pizza in Silvis. And his recipes have been sold to a company called Mama Basso's, and you can purchase them in grocery store freezer sections around the Midwest. But the idea was simple. Let's use ingredients that are already available in-house because they were an Italian restaurant, and expand our business profile. So it didn't take long for these homemade pizzas to become their signature dish, and it became the pizza that the Quad Cities area has been known for. They are supposedly the beginner, they set off the chain here, but there are a lot of other options as well. So let's talk about what characterizes a Quad Cities pizza. Quad City style pizza is one that's best described as being made backward. It has a beautiful toasty sweetness because there is malt that is in the dough. And then the tomato sauce has a little bit of cayenne or some kind of heat, some chili flakes in it, and that will help cut the sweetness of the crust. The sausage is one of the more popular toppings, and like the Chicago style sausage, it has fennel in it, and it gives it that flavor that's a little reminiscent of licorice. It's really lovely when it's paired with the malty dough and the spicy tomato sauce. Like I said, the pizza is cut by using scissors into these rectangles. Harris Pizza is one of the local favorites. It opened in 1960, and it initially used a set of blueprint shears to cut its pizza. And now they have custom made scissors that come from a proprietary mold just for cutting their scissors. But originally it was blueprint shears that they used to cut their pizza into these rectangles. Another interesting thing about the pizza is that it's cooked on a rotating deck. It's not, the temperature's high. It's usually about above 500. It's a fast bake, and it will melt the cheese and the crust will get crispy and it will have that gooey texture, but it needs to be on a rotating deck. It's not just static in the oven. Some places in the Quad Cities will put molasses in the crust, and that will give it a slightly different profile that that goes really nicely with the traditional sauces that they use on the pizza. Speaking of the sauce, it's a thinner than what we would have on a Chicago style pizza or on a Detroit style pizza. It's a thinner sauce, and it's thin so that you can spread it evenly along the thin crust. And it needs to be this way because it curls up along the edge when it bakes, and the edge isn't very thick. And then the other thing about the Quad Cities pizza is the cheese. And most restaurants will use mozzarella, and they will get chunks of it. And instead of grating it to put it on the pizza, they will break it into small pieces and bigger chunks. And so that when it bakes, the cheese is going to get gooier, and you'll have thicker, gooier bits here and there on the top, instead of having a uniform layer that you would have from like a more commercially shredded cheese. And a lot of times they end the pizza with dried or fresh oregano on the top. So can you get it in Chicago? Why, yes, you can. In Chicago, you can go to a place called Roots Pizza. There are 4 different locations in Chicago proper, in Lincoln Square, Old Town, West Town, and a newer one in Printers Row, which has a retractable roof and is supposed to be a lovely place to go and have pizza when the weather's nice. Roots, similar to the pizza that you'll find in the Quad Cities, has a multi-crust, and it's loaded with lots of fresh melty cheese. But if you want the original pizzas in the Quad Cities, then there's only one place to go, and that is Harris's. They have copyrighted the slogan, "The Original Quad City Style Pizza," and they are the original. But Frank's Pizza still has a legitimate claim to the baking method. So you could either go to Harris's or Frank's and get really legitimate pizza. There's lots of other variations in the Quad Cities, and you may want to check out Clint's Draft House Pizza and Grill in Moline if you are in Moline. They've been putting out pizza for about 25 years there. We are now going to move further west to Colorado, to yet another style pizza. And I didn't even know this existed before I started researching for this program. Colorado Mountain Pizza is a style that will rivals the tallest peaks of the mountains where it's located. It was first launched in 1973 at Bojo's Pizza, which is in Idaho City Pizza, or Colorado. In fact, when Bojo's was first starting out, the owner, money was tight, and the owner used to sleep in a sleeping bag on the floor of the kitchen and just eat the pizza, or so the story goes. But nearby skiers would discover this pizza, and that's what created the popular buzz for the Rocky Mountain Colorado style pizza. So let's talk about what makes this pizza special. So it's a pie where everything is better, bigger. So that means you're going to have a thicker crust on the pizza, you're going to have more cheese, and you're going to have a ridiculous amount of toppings. But let's start with the crust. The authentic Colorado style pizza is a braided crust, and this will help give these oversized slices that are loaded with ingredients more stability when you're lifting it up and eating it. It's also made with honey instead of sugar or malt or some of the other ingredients that other pizzas have. And it's frequently served with honey, and people dip the crust in the honey at the end. It's in fact one of their favorite sauces to dip the pizza into, believe it or not. Most pizzerias and restaurants that serve Colorado style pizza will allow you to choose from a wide variety of ingredients to make your own pie. And every pizzeria then will also offer a signature Colorado mountain pie that's unique to their establishment. For example, at Bojo's, like I said, that was the original, they have the Firecracker Pizza. And this is a spicy pizza that features fresh jalapenos, spicy chicken, ranch dressing, and hot sauce. And it uses Monterey Jack cheese instead of the classic mozzarella cheese. So they're kind of swerving a little bit from the more traditional pizza toppings into a slightly more unique pizza topping as we move west here. And the idea is that there's a vast cornucopia of toppings, and they're available at most pizzerias, and you can put together your own topping. So another one difference, it kind of looks a little bit like a Chicago style pizza, but the Chicago deep dish pizza takes about 40 minutes to bake. Colorado mountain pie only takes about 10 minutes because it's being baked in a really hot wood fired oven. And it's going to give you that crispy underneath, and the top, the melted cheese on the topping isn't going to get burned. And then the braiding along the edge is going to stay still chewy and soft on the inside because of the hot oven. Typically, the pizzas are small, single serving pizzas. So you would order an 8-inch and you would get whatever toppings you want on it, and that would be your personal pie. But they do have larger ones that you can get with a group, but typically they're the smaller single serving pies. So can you get these Colorado style pizzas in Chicago? Alas, sadly, you cannot. There are no pizzerias in Chicago currently making Colorado style pizzas. So you are going to have to go out west in order to try these. And a few of the places that you're going to want to check out is Bojo's, which is the original in Idaho Springs. You could also check out Rocky Mountain Pizza Company. It is in Glenwood Springs, Hops and Pie in Denver, and then the High Mountain Pies is in Leadville, Colorado. Finally, we're going to move all the way to the West Coast, and we're going to get to California. And this is one of the newest pizza styles to kind of come up on the scene. And California pizzas are touted for their fresh and innovative toppings. So where, Colorado started becoming, putting more interesting tastes together on top of the pizza, California has really taken it about 5 steps further. And their pizzas are unique and flavorful, but they don't really resemble the traditional pizza. California Pizza Kitchen, for example, they introduced a pie that featured barbecue sauce, grilled chicken, smoked Gouda, red onions, and fresh cilantro. And a lot of people shook their heads and thought this is never going to fly. But it has become extremely popular. And since then, over-the-top toppings have become a trademark of the gourmet wood-fired pizzas that you'll find in California. They're often similar to Neapolitan in crust style and size, but they break all the rules when you look at the toppings. So California pizzas will draw their inspiration from the more traditional East Coast pies, making them more in a Neapolitan style. But they then look towards fresh toppings and interesting combinations of toppings, such as artichokes and corn and avocado. California pizzas do a lot of vegetarian and vegan styles as well. Unlike many other regional specialties, the thing that makes this pizza special is the innovativeness in terms of its toppings. And so can we get these in Chicago? Well, we can. There's California Pizza Kitchen. There's one right at Oak Brook. But if you're in California, there are some really innovative and interesting places that you can get California style pizzas. You'll want to check out Spago, Chez Panisse, and Wolfgang Puck. They all have great pizza styles. If you're in the Los Angeles area, there's Jelena and Pizzeria Moza, which is Chef Nancy Silverton's latest endeavor. She was the founder of the La Brea Bakery and has been very famous. If you're in Northern California, then Pizzeria Delfino, Tony's Pizza, Napolitano, Pizzetta, 211, Pauline's, and Flour and Water. So I wanted to give some ideas of what some of the toppings were at some of these restaurants. So I did go online and looked at their menu. And so, for example, at Pizzeria Moza, which is the one that Nancy Silverton started, she has a pizza called Squash Blossom, Tomato, and Burrata. There's a Primavera that has pea tendrils, asparagus, green garlic, snap peas, ricotta, mozzarella, and lemon. And at Jelena, there's a Ortega, Brussels sprout, mozzarella, garlic, and pickled Fresno pizza. And at Flour and Water, there is one that has black trumpets, mushroom crema, kale. So you get the idea. These are non-traditional toppings on a pizza, and it's a complete twist on traditional Italian pizzas. So we've made our way all the way across the country, looking at some of the regional pizzas. And I guess I was just interested in hearing from you about some of your favorite pizza styles, and if there are any restaurants in the Chicago area that you can recommend.
Susan, we had a question that came in over chat from Kate, who's wondering, there was a bottle of Heinz ketchup, I guess, in the background of the California style. Do you know if that was a ingredient for the pizza or a topping, or just there by chance?
Well, I think it was probably a topping for the pizza. It just goes to show how California takes everything and does it differently. So has anyone tried the Quad Cities pizza? That's what I want to know, or the Colorado style pizza. Mike, what is your favorite style?
Oh, well, I kind of, around here, I do tend to eat that tavern style pizza. I mean, if I have family visiting from out of town, I'll get the real thing from maybe Lou Malnati's, but I do like tavern style. I'm really excited to sometime go to New Haven though and try one of those white clam pies. I think that sounds really cool.
Well, if you don't get to New Haven, I've had the Peace Pizza in Wicker Park, and I can highly recommend it. It's delicious.
Nice. Has anybody else been to Peace or any of the Chicago places that Susan mentioned? All right, well, if we have any questions or any comments, and if not, then that will conclude the program tonight. Everybody's on mute, so you're welcome to unmute yourself if you want. Oh, Papa's Pizza in Woodridge, that's okay. So we do have some chats here. Okay, yeah, good tavern style Papa's Pizza in Woodridge. That sounds delicious. I'll have to check that out.
I've been to Papa's. It's very good. I'm a pizza aficionado.
So there's a question: what is the technique to get the center of the Neapolitan style to cook as it is often kind of liquidy. I mean, that's how it is when they make it in Naples. So I think that's just the way it is. And they even have the 800 to 1,000 degree ovens, and they still get that kind of mushy center. It's what you expect, and you're not disappointed by the result because that's the way it is, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's what I kind of thought, because it's always a challenge. I love that style, but I'm always it's if I cook it too long, then you're going to burn around the crust.
Right.
So I was just wondering if anybody had any ideas, but that one, the Neapolitan, I think that's often that's sold by the slice, isn't it? Because when I was in Naples, I saw people walking around at lunch. I'm like, what are they eating in these, these clear wrapping, it wasn't a napkin, but a little more substantial. And it was Neapolitan. They just buy it by the slice and go about their business.
Yeah. I love that idea. And the fact that it's so available everywhere on every street corner, practically in Naples. I had a chance to eat pizza at the Di Matozzi, Europeo Di Matozzi or something like that, I think was the name. And it was amazing. Just a simple pizza margarita, but it shows that if you have high quality ingredients, it'll taste good, even if it only cooks for a few minutes in their really hot oven.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, so Joyce is saying, don't forget about Home Run Inn. Yeah, Home Run Inn is a favorite for me as well. I do like their pizza. Gordon, unfortunately, we didn't get to travel to Colorado or California to try their pizza, but I like that idea. If we would have been able to sample them all, get those plane tickets to the coast, that would have been great.
Yeah, I'm curious to try the Colorado pizza with the honey in the crust and dipping it in the honey at the end. So I don't know, maybe sometime soon I'll get there.
So I was just wondering, where did you get your information for your research? It was really good and informative, and I love making pizza. So,
well, from my perspective, just like one of our normal programs that Susan and I run, we search far and wide for our information on the internet and in books that we have here in the library, videos on YouTube. Susan, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Or any particular videos?
Right. Well, we've both been to Italy, and we are both kind of foodies and have eaten quite a bit of food in the area. So we have a very strong foundation, and and then we did our research to get more specific. There are even a couple of other styles out there that we didn't include in the interest of time that I didn't know about. I mean, mine are kind of offshoots of what we discussed, but
there's like St. Louis style that we could have talked about. They use a special kind of cheese on their pizza called Provel.
Okay.
I'm sure some of you have had that, and there are other, like Trenton, New Jersey has their own style of pizza that we could have talked about, but we wanted to keep it to around an hour, so it's obvious we could have gone at greater length on some of these too.
Okay. Did you have like if you looked at YouTube, did you have any favorite YouTube how-to videos that you maybe would be able to?
Yeah, the videos I was looking at weren't so much how to make it, but more about the history and that sort of thing.
Sure.
There was a really good documentary called Pizza, A Love Story that talked about New Haven pizza, which I do recommend. And it had Henry Winkler in there, and Michael Bolton, as I mentioned, was a big fan of Sally's Pizza. That's a good one. It's about an hour and a half long. They really love their pizza there in New Haven.
Okay, that'd be fun. Thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments? We'd love to hear your pizza thoughts.
So I will be sending out the slides so that you can have them to refer to and get some ideas of places you may want to try in Chicago, probably tomorrow, along with a link to our evaluation form or a copy of our evaluation form. And in that, if there is a food that is kind of regional in the country that you'd like to see us cover in our next episode of this series, feel free to include that and we will consider it as we think through what we're going to do next.
Thanks very much. Yeah.
I think it's fun to see how the food can vary from region to region, the same food. So it's interesting.
Thanks.
Well, thanks for coming, everybody, and we'll see you around the library.
Okay, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.